Hello friends, this is Cara-Renee with B.Reborn Art and Healing, coming to you with my Sunday's Art of Truth. This is the first Sunday's Art of Truth that I have done since the summer started, or before the summer. So I decided I wanted to go ahead and just kickstart getting back in the routine of doing the Sunday's Art of Truth. And so I'm just going to share a minute with you about what I have kind of on my mind and give you an idea of what we're going to be doing. And then I'll switch over to the voiceover. As I've indicated before, mixed media tends to go all kinds of directions, and so it tends to be really hard to edit the video and those kinds of things. So what we're going to do is we're going to be creating around this idea, this truth actually, about, and I come from a faith background, and so the things that I cling to and the things that I look to when I am in a place of sorrow or I'm in a place of struggle is Jesus. He is my friend. He is the lover of my soul. He is everything to me. He has saved my life, all my life. And so I turn to him when I have emotions that are bigger than I can bear, or when I feel abandoned, or I feel less than, or I feel like not enough, or I feel invisible, all of those kinds of things. And so I've had this song going through my head over the last few weeks that talks about how his eye is on the sparrow and I know he watches over me. So that's what I'm going to be creating around today, is that kind of those words. And so what I did is I printed them on a piece of tissue paper, and I'll be inserting this into the project at some point. And so I will do my best to minimize the scatteredness, and I will come back and do the voiceover to guide you through this process in a more linear way than I can often do kind of on the spot. So I'm creating in my my journal. I'll give you the dimensions of this journal. It's a mixed media journal I got off of Amazon, so I will link that for you. I've got my Liquitex matte medium, my Crafters Workshop modeling paste, crackle paint. You know me and my crackle paint, have to have that. I've got my golden green gold fluid acrylic. I may or may not use all of these things. I just pull out kind of what speaks to me at the moment. Nicolazo gold, again in golden fluid acrylic. That one is not open yet. I'm going to have to open that up. My iridescent gold fine, just in case I want to use that as well. And then raw umber. And then I've got a stencil, so I think I'm going to try to do some brickwork on this and maybe some of this. I'm not sure. And I printed, these are some vintage paper, music papers from my stash. This is from 1912. I don't sell my work or anything. I create it for my own purposes, and I give away everything that I make. So aside from my what I create in my art journal. However, I do like to take photos of this journal, of this page, and use it in other ways. So, and again, I'm not selling, so I'm not reproducing it in any way. If I use it again, it'll be in a journal. So those are my background papers that I will be putting behind this beautiful image. Let me grab the whole image first, and I'll show you what I'm doing with it. So I have some Stamperia rice paper, and this is what it looks like whole. So it has these beautiful birds, these 5 birds. I don't know if they're sparrows or not, you guys, but they're birds. And the whole idea of this truth is that if he cares so much for the birds of the air, the sparrows, and when they fall to the ground, how much more do you think he cares for us? Those that he made in his image, those who he loves so dearly, those who he gave his life for. So this is what the image looks like whole. But because I'm doing this spread that I wanted to go this way, I took another piece of it and I tore it up. So, and this is kind of what it looks like on the back. So it can be a little bit rough to tear, but I was successful. So I'm kind of arranging it sort of like this, I think. I don't know if I'll use all of the pieces, but this is kind of the idea. This is the focal point. And then I think I wanted this one up here because I wanted that kind of that postmark to go there. And so as you can see, it is a little bit different than the original, but yet it is we're retaining a lot of the originality of the piece. I'm not sure if I'll use this one because I am going to have music pages to go underneath. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get going. So we're going to start by adhering our background papers that are going to go here on the base of the journal. But first I want to glue a couple of pages together. I am grabbing a little bit of parchment paper here. I just keep it close by. It allows me to put it behind the pages so that I don't get a bunch of medium on the pages that are behind it. So that's what I'm doing there. Got a little bit of sticky pages going on, probably from my previous project. So I'm just going to glue these two pages together. The papers in this journal are not very thick, but they are definitely thicker than like book page and things like that. It is a mixed media spiral journal here. So just using my Liquitex matte medium to go ahead and put these together, and then we will start with collaging the vintage music pages on top of that. And again, those are just papers from my stash. I like to create a little bit of background so on the page so that when I put the rice paper down, we've got some of that shining through because it is transparent in places where there's not a really solid image. So that's the way I like to work anyway. So I'm going to start by just kind of tearing these papers down a bit using my tear ruler. And just going to apply them kind of randomly here and there. I am tearing off the top, and I'm going to use that piece here in a minute, but I'm just getting the bigger pieces down to start with. I will be using that piece that I tore off as well, both of the heading and on two of the pages, excuse me. And I do want to apologize in advance for my arm there. I got kind of attacked by some kind of bug or something when we were at the coast, and my body is not responding well to them at all, so they're quite angry at this point. So I didn't want to cover them up too early because I want to make sure that they have a chance to heal a little bit. So I do apologize for that. I know it is very unsightly there in the video. My right arm there isn't as bad as the left arm, but my goodness, they just chewed me up, and I don't even know what they were, but I think I had an allergic reaction. So I was joking with some coworkers the other day that I promise, like, I'm not a meth addict or anything with these sores all over my body. I just had a reaction I just can't get ahead of. So I was pulling there an old credit card, gift card to kind of smooth those papers out. And then we're going to just continue in this fashion until we get all of the pieces on. I do also apply, as you can see there, a layer of matte medium on the top as well. Kind of acts as a seal so that paper can withstand the mediums that are going to go on top. So just coming to the end of the collaging here, And I do fuss a little bit with trying to cut off the edges that are overhanging, so I hope you'll bear with me. Obviously, first we did dry, so between every layer I am drying. I try to indicate that with just showing you the dryer there. So what I was talking about here in real time was what I discovered that the pages say. And so the vintage music page is entitled A Little Pink Rose, and it says, "A little pink rose in my garden grew, the tiniest one of all, 'twas kissed by the sun." And I just love that, and I did not pick that on purpose. I literally went to my download, my personal digital download, or vintage, excuse me, and I just picked some. So it's always interesting to me how that happens, kind of not by design, but I just love that because, as I said in the beginning, I turn to Jesus and God when I am struggling, and I just love this idea that it says, "'Twas kissed by the sun," S-U-N, and I turn that and I make that about Jesus, the Son of God, and so S-O-N. So that just really pricked my heart in a really good way. So I wanted to tell you about that. So here I'm just trimming off the edges. I was kind of having a little bit of a fight with the paper. This journal is pretty big, so it was a little bit hard to control there. So here I'm just going to start deciding where I want the placement of my pieces of not tissue paper. This is rice paper. And I will try to link where I got this in case you are interested. I believe it's ACS Supplies on Etsy. I order most of my rice papers historically from her, and they are absolutely amazing. So I did notice I was struggling here with my matte medium. I've got like chunks of stuff in it, and I'm not sure what that is about. So you're going to see me kind of trying to pick that away a little bit here and there as we move through the process here, but it works out just fine in the end. So I'm just going to let you watch here for a moment. I really wanted to capture, I think as I mentioned before in the beginning, that little postage piece there. And if you look at the still photos at the end of the video, that does end up showing through. I am a mixed media grungy artist, so no matter how hard I try, I have a really hard time not going dark because I really love the depth that is created. I love the mystery of things kind of getting lost in the background, and as I've mentioned many times before, those layers tell a story, and they did in this case as well, which I'll talk about more over on the blog. Again, this is my Sunday's Art of Truth. There's always an inspirational writing that goes along with the art project, so I hope that you'll head over there and check it out. The link will be in the video description. So yeah, it does get pretty dark, and a lot of these bits get lost, but it's always interesting, the things that still shine through. So this is a Sean Petit stencil that I'm using here, and I'm just going to be kind of using, I'm going to be using my Crafters Workshop modeling paste to apply some texture to the spread in a variety of places. I believe that I use this it's kind of a mandala type looking design there, up with a little cross and some numbers, and I'm going to put it in 3 different places across the page, as you'll be able to see here. You do want to, when you're applying modeling paste, you do want to kind of go in a little bit thicker on the first layer, and then you bring your palette knife or credit card or whatever you're using to apply it, and kind of take the excess off the stencil so that you don't have a bunch of stuff hanging out that is going to kind of peak when you pull the stencil off. So here I'm just wiping away some of the modeling paste that got on my bird, and that's perfectly fine. It works really well. And I was also thinking, just as I let you watch here, I was wondering if anybody would be interested in kind of a mixed media 101 kind of series where I can begin to kind of break down some of the techniques that I use, some of the products that I use when I do incorporate some mixed media into my onto my channel. So if you'd be interested in that, you can leave me a comment and let me know. Let me know what you'd like to see. I know some of you are dabbling in some mixed media techniques, but I know it can be intimidating because there's a lot of different supplies and such. So just provide a little bit of feedback if you're comfortable doing so, and I will give that some consideration. So here, just holding this up so you can see a little bit of that texture. I thought I did that a little bit longer and a little bit closer, but I didn't. So, and again, I did dry that really well. And I'm coming in with this Tim Holtz brick stencil here, and I'm going to fill in excuse me, some of the other places with the brick stencil. And I was just pointing there with my finger to indicate that I was going to kind of go around that piece of tissue paper that's on the left. So, and I mention this often, I'm not a very patient crafter, and so what I always run into when I get done adding modeling paste and such, that I get impatient and I want to go in with my mediums, I want to go in with my paint, and you're going to see as we move along that does create a problem. It's nothing like, it's not disastrous or anything, but I definitely could do well to kind of slow down a little bit. But I haven't been creating mixed media very much, and I haven't done any since Sunday's Art of Truth, I think since school let out or right before that. So it's been a couple of months. So I'm getting back into the swing of things here. And then I don't like that sharp edge, so I'm just using my finger to kind of spread out that and kind of soften that edge of the brick there. You can kind of manipulate that modeling paste for a bit until it starts to dry. So just cleaning off my palette knife, we're going to go directly in with the Deco Art crackle paint. As you know, if you've been watching, this is one of my favorite mediums, and I kind of feel like I went a little bit overboard in the application here because the crackle paint is not transparent, and so I love what it did around the flowers because it just left these areas where those roses were peeking through. But it did kind of was a little bit different on this, maybe because I was working a little larger than I normally do with using crackle paint, but I think it's gorgeous, so you guys can let me know what you think. It definitely is a particular style to kind of make these things a little bit more concealed, but again, that tells a story for me about the layers of our life and about how things build on one another and all those kinds of lessons. So I was just indicating there with my watch that I did pause because you don't want to heat set this with your heat tool because you want the crackle paint to crackle on its own. Once it starts crackling, you can apply the heat to it, but you do want to get it going on its own first. So that was just a close-up, obviously, of that crackle and that texture. And I love the difference in the texture that's created between the crackle paint and the modeling paste. It creates a lot of variation that I think is really pretty. So this is my golden fluid acrylic in green gold that you just saw there, and I'm going to start applying that on the surface. I didn't have a great plan here, which kind of bit me a little bit. I forgot how vibrant and kind of springy green this green is, and so it wasn't the effect I was looking for, but I'll show you how I kind of tone that down as we move through this. At first I was like, oh my goodness, what have you done? Which I actually say a lot when I'm doing mixed media because it kind of has a life of its own, and the effects and the processes that you go through can be a little bit nerve-wracking because sometimes it'll go in a direction or have an effect that you didn't expect. So there, I'm just going to come in with a little bit. I sprayed a little bit of water just to kind of lighten it, because I think what I don't like the most about this is that it colorizes that crackle paint with a kind of kind of a yucky yellow green color, and I didn't like that. So I'm going to be coming in with my golden fluid acrylic in Nickel Azo Gold. It is one of my favorite colors, and that did help to kind of tone down that green. And when you're using colors like this, they will, you can come in with like a raw umber or other colors to kind of push back the brightness, to kind of tone them down a little bit. It does take a little bit of playing around, but you do have to experiment, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not like a win right out of the gate. You have to experiment, play, see what you like, see what you don't like. But here I'm just squirting that out just in little bits here and there around the spread, and I'm adding a little bit of water to my brush, and I'm just going to spread that out. And as you can see, it is muting out that green, that really springy green. But the most important part of mixed media technique is the layers, and so at any point I have to make a choice to not give up and just throw this in the trash. I have to follow through, and that can be kind of hard. It can be discouraging, but you're going to see how this comes together as I struggle with the result that I'm getting at each step of the way. So there I'm just using a baby wipe to kind of lighten up all of the color that I have on the surface right now. It looks kind of strange. It's got a really strange tone to it, but I will be coming in with other colors to help that out. And I believe I'm going to get some alcohol here on a towel and try to, there we go, yeah, to try to remove some of that color. So sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't, but you can see there, even in that first swipe, it is lightening that a little bit, but then it kind of left that weird color that we had at the beginning. So it's just kind of hit and miss, you guys. So I encourage you to play in your journal, because if it goes south, it's not a big deal. It's in your journal and you learn from it. And the beauty and gift of mixed media is I could just come in and just gesso over this entire page if I hated it and do something completely new. Even with all that texture on it, it would just create an instant texture base for another project. So that's another thing to keep in mind. That can be tricky if you're trying to do something in your junk journal. You don't have that same freedom, but in an art journal you do, and it's a great place to practice is what I'm saying. So we're going to dry this, I believe, really quick here. And then I'm going to come in with my raw umber fluid acrylic and my glazing medium, and I'm going to do a glaze over this entire spread. And I often do this because what it does is the glazing medium and the paint mixed creates what's called a glaze, and you can apply it to the entire spread. Kind of looks scary at this point because it's like, wow, you're covering over all of that background. But because it's glazing medium and paint, I'm going to be able to use a baby wipe and come in and wipe a lot of that off. And what is left is the color sinking in between the texture of the bricks and the texture of the crackle paint. So, and I'll be able to wipe it off of the birds, no worries there. I know that can be a little frightening to watch if you've not seen it before, but it works really well. So you're going to see me. I'm going to let you watch here for a couple of minutes because I'm going to go back and forth. I'm going to do a dance back and forth and add a little bit more of that glazing solution there, just to get that brown kind of into all those cracks and crevices that we've created. One of the things that I did run into here, guys, is that remember earlier I was talking about how I'm not very patient. And so when you start adding wet medium on top of the texture paste and the crackle paint, the texture paste mostly, not as much as the crackle paint, you it makes it soft, and it can you'll see white bits here off to the left and kind of towards the bottom under those birds. That is where the modeling paste was not completely set. And as I'm using my finger to try to get some of this solution, this raw umber glazing medium solution around the spread still some more, I'm having trouble because those areas are soft because the modeling paste has been affected. So they're just a quick dry, and here's a close-up of that texture and how that brown goes into the all that texture. So that's the beauty of mixed media. So there you can see on those bricks, so you can see a lot of white that I'm pointing at, and that's where the modeling paste was affected by the moisture. So I just roll with it. I don't worry about it because every layer we put on top is just going to add to it. So I did decide that it might be better to come in with some Liquitex ink, and this is the transparent raw umber, one of my favorite colors, and I'm going to just apply it here. I start by doing a bead there at the top and then letting it kind of drip down, and then I quickly wipe that up because the ink will set quicker than the paint, so I just want to get it off those birds mainly. And so here I kind of shift my technique to dropping some of that acrylic ink just around the spread, and then apply some water to make it kind of swoosh out, which is another piece of the magic of mixed media, in my opinion anyway, just because it just kind of you can see it just spreads, like it activates with that water. And I'm using my brush to kind of spread it out in that area a little bit. I don't want it to be kind of just glopped up in little areas there. So, and this helps it to really get in those cracks a little bit more. The ink is obviously much more liquidy than the paint solution, the raw umber and the glazing medium. So it worked really well in this case. So again, it is often an experiment, and you just have to be willing to let go of the idea you have in your head. Sometimes, most often with my mixed media projects, I have an idea of what I'm trying to say, but it very seldom turns out the way that I had in my mind. It is usually better because the journey of creating it teaches me things as well, which is really also a part of the story. So here's just another close-up of what that ink looks like as it's settled into the texture. A little bit more dramatic and deeper. And there's that postage that I was telling you about. Can you see it there? I love that showed up, and I love the little peaks of those roses that are behind the brick. And I'll be writing about that also in the blog, about kind of what my takeaway is of what happens there, where the beauty gets kind of trapped behind the texture and behind the bricks and behind the cracks. So it's kind of a repetitive theme in my mixed media journey, but it's very meaningful, and I hope that you will check out the blog and read up on that. So I'm coming in with my Amsterdam quinacridone rose ink. This I don't believe there are mistakes in mixed media, but this definitely was one that I was like, oh, as soon as I started putting it down, I'm like, oh, that's so bright, and it didn't have the effect I wanted. It didn't flow like the Liquitex ink. It's a completely different company that makes it. So yeah, I wasn't really impressed with this, because when I sprayed it with water, it hardly moved. Like, it just stayed really kind of opaque. And made-up colors tend to do that. And by made-up, I mean quinacridone rose is a combination of pigments. So often when that happens, they don't behave. They don't have the same composition as something that's a little bit more straight up, like raw umber. It's just a brown. It's a dark, deep brown. But I make this work, and you're going to see this unfold here again as we continue. You can see bits of the pink, but I am getting rid of most of the really solid bits because I did not like it. The birds don't really have pink in them. They have more of a crimson, kind of a deeper color. So, but I use every layer as it is, and I just go with it. I roll with it, embrace the unexpected, and I end up loving it in the end. So that's just kind of the repetitive lesson here, is just kind of letting go of your ideas about it. So I am reaching behind me to grab, I can't remember because I'm doing the voiceover what I was grabbing here. I guess we'll find out together. But I am reaching in the drawer behind me to get, this is the Permanent Sap Green in Liquitex ink. This was a game changer, because remember when I was talking about how we can use darker colors to neutralize other colors in the design, and that's what happened here with the sap green. It flows really, really well. It mixes with the pink because it just mixes naturally. I didn't completely dry it. And so you can still see a bits of that pink tint, but the green is, again, pushing it back and neutralizing it and bringing a pop of that really kind of earthy color that we like to see when we're doing kind of botanical things like this in terms of the florals and whatnot. So the sap green was definitely a good choice, and it definitely was very, it added to the spread, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Trying to find different ways to say it, I guess. And just dabbing it up just a little bit with my baby wipe. But I love the depth. And as you can see, it's very dark. Like, you can hardly see those birds, right? I mean, you definitely have to hunt for what you're seeing there. It's kind of a mystery, but I love that. So here's just a close-up again. Look at the green and how that mixes in with the brown, and it's just creating this beautiful dark depth that is just really pleasing. Another quick zap there, and then I believe that now we're going to come in with the Iridescent Gold Fine. This is also a golden fluid acrylic I use often in my projects, and so we're going to go ahead and use this and just apply it here. We apply a lot of this actually, but I'll let you watch here for a moment. You just, I'm just using my finger, kind of tapping some of it off so it's not too thick, and then just using my finger to kind of just skip across the texture. I really love the gold. I've spoke of this often, especially when it's a project that I'm doing that I kind of have some deeper thoughts about value and who I am and what I believe. And I believe that gold is very royal. And so when I use gold, it reminds me of who I am. It reminds me that I'm precious. It reminds me that as the blog, you'll see over on the blog, his eye is on the sparrow, and that's and he's watching over us, right? Because we're of great value. And even if that's not your belief system, guys, our value, you can still embrace that level of your value. It is true no matter where you come from, no matter what your belief system is. You are valuable, you are beautiful, you are precious, you are worth more than gold. And that's kind of what I try to communicate, again, regardless of your background, regardless of what your faith system is or not. It doesn't really matter. I'm just sharing from my personal experience and how I live my life. So here I'm grabbing that little piece of rice paper that says his eye is on the sparrow. I know he watches over me. I often forget that I have a sentiment to apply to a project, and so I didn't reserve any space for that because there's so much stinking texture on this page. But I'm going to let you watch this, watch as I fuss through this, and also watch that I'm going to apply it in a place that I went for it. I printed this on tissue paper. I adhere it down with my fluid matte medium, lots of matte medium. You want it to be very, very wet. And then I didn't like it. So just watch and see what I do. So we're going to go ahead and place it down. I'm going to put another layer of matte medium on the top. The first thing I didn't like here is I didn't like the shape that I cut that piece into because the tissue paper does not completely disappear. There's a lot of factors that determine how translucent it becomes. It was not very translucent here, and I didn't like the shape. So you can see I just took it off. So tissue paper is a great way to play with mixed media as well, because you can print your images and stuff on tissue paper or your words or whatever, and then you can, if it's just not working, it doesn't feel right, you can just take it off. It's amazing. So in this case, I didn't want to waste my whole sheet of paper and that whole sheet of tissue, so I did print the quote or the words 3 times, so I had 3 chances, and I do end up using all 3 chances. You're not going to see the 3rd chance, but you'll see it in the photos at the end where I apply it here and I didn't like it, but I ended the video and I was just like, oh, I just can't live with this. So I took the 3rd quote and I put it on a piece of chipboard, and then I glued it on there, and then I added a little bit of raw umber around the edges and some gold, and it was much better because I really struggle with what this looks like here, because the tissue paper is not dissolving. It's just kind of leaving that edge that I just don't think is very pretty. I did try to come in once it was dry with a little bit of charcoal pencil just to kind of put a little bit of a frame around it, but it wasn't great. So guys, I hope that you enjoyed. Thanks for coming by. I hope that you learned something, and I hope to see you over on the blog. Thanks.